Well, everybody, welcome to another edition of the GIS for Your Success webinar. This is episode number 15, Overcoming Inequity in the GIS Workplace. And I'm host Toby Soto of GISsuccess.com, a GIS leadership and management resource website with blog, video, online courses, and downloadable content to help you through your journey as a GIS professional. And with me, we have our co-host. We have Kloos from the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Utah, and we have Tim Nolan from Collin County, Texas. And we have a large community that was registered. We had 113 people registered, so this was obviously a topic of interest, and by no means it has a lot of traction. And I just want to give you guys a huge thank you for coming online and meeting with us, because when you guys show up, that lets us know we're doing the right thing and hitting the right topics. Just keeps giving us motivation to keep going and keep finding more and great topics to provide to you guys. So for those of you who are watching on the YouTube replay, make sure that you subscribe and also hit the notification bell for future webinar episodes to be posted. And those that are in the live audience, you have the ability to use chat, but make sure that you set your chat to all panelists and attendees so we all can see what you guys are posting. And we'll also take that chat and post it in Slack at the end of the webinar. And before we introduce our special guest, I did this thing last time on our last webinar, and it was kind of fun, and it was a little different, and it was a way of engaging the audience and allowing you guys to have a different experience to this webinar and have engagement and gain some value immediately out of it, and by utilizing like these tools that we have here with the webinar rather than being at a conference. And so what I plan to do here is I want you guys to, in chat, tell us what you're doing right now, what project you're doing or what tasks that you're doing. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and put it in chat and put your email address, because as you guys are doing that, everyone is seeing what everyone else is doing, and you may find something like, oh, you know what, so-and-so is doing that project and I want to engage with that person. I want to see what issues or solutions that they've come up with. And so it's just like this nice engagement tool. And so I want you guys to be able to do that, and then I'll also post this in our Slack group. So it's a form of resource to you guys, and definitely some content and some value. So I'm going to go ahead and ask my co-hosts. I'm going to hit with you first there, Wade. What are you doing now?
First, I need to unmute.
Yeah, there you go.
First thing is figuring out how the technology works. I would say that I'm spending a lot of time focusing now on process improvement. Our agency and our state government here in Utah is very focused on process improvement. And of course, GIS has always played a part in doing that. So this is a very natural thing for me to begin to look at, but I'm gaining a lot more appreciation for the complexities that GIS professionals, we're always embedded in an organization. We don't exist for ourselves. And so we have to fully appreciate the work that is happening within our organizations. And, just by coincidence, Nathan Hazelwood down in New Zealand published a LinkedIn story about geospatial strategy and such. And he spent time talking about identifying the problem in your organization that you could be working on. And there's many, many different problems. We often have more solutions than problems. But let me give you one example, and I'll just kind of hold this up. Can you guys see that okay? It's just, it's flow chart of day. And it's filled with tasks that one of them in a system is going to be a critical activity. And identifying what to work on, what's the problem, I'm telling you, I'm pulling out what's left of my hair to be able to fully appreciate the complexity of our systems of work, and then to identify what could be the problem, the right problem to work on. So I'll leave it at that, kind of saying, I'm still struggling to find problems because there's no problem of finding solutions, but it's working on the right problems. And that's what I've been focused on here at DNR. Thanks.
Sweet. All right, Tim, you're up.
Okay, well, hey, first of all, I'm doing something new here. I'm on location at a GIS conference right now behind me, so I'm missing the last session to hang out with you guys. But in the spirit, what we're working on now, in the spirit of things are change every day, all the time, every day is a new adventure. We bought an ERP system that had a permitting package, and the team that does all the permitting, they don't like it at all. So we've actually been invited, my dev team and GIS team, together to work on a permitting package that integrates with this ERP and abandon the piece that we bought. So I'm excited. I'm going to use some agile techniques to kind of get that thing going. But yeah, last time we spoke, that was not a project. it just sort of happened. So so that's what we're working on right now.
That's cool. Yeah, that last project you had was like, where's the beef?
Yeah, still working on that one too, but that's old. That's an old project now. That was last month. We got a new project this time.
That was classic. You know, for myself, you know, I wear two hats. I am a GIS consultant, so I am working with some local municipalities still on intergov GIS support services and ERP services. And the other thing too is, you know, the other hat is GISsuccess.com. And last time we spoke, we were talking about developing a membership site, and I'm proud to say that we now have that membership site, and we also now have a URL for it, and it's GISsuccessnetwork.com, and it's a 24/7 GIS leadership and management information training and community portal. So very excited about that, and currently we are developing some master classes and working with Wade right here with ROI. And so we're coming up with an ROI master class, and it's we're really trying to leverage the technology. I mean, you know, with Zoom and webinars and all the new online capabilities, we just want to take this to a new level and a new interactive way of learning and having you guys progress. And so really excited about that. So if you want to learn more about it, just email me or just go to GISsuccessnetwork.com. All right, so let's go to our webinar. Let's talk to our special guest with us today. We have Miriam Olivares from Yale University. She's the GIS librarian for them. We're very excited to have you here. I mean, this is special for us in so many ways. But your permanent appointment is at the Center of Science and Social Science Information. That's correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. And then you have a bachelor's degree in architecture from Monterey Tech. You have a master's of science in land management. And
land development.
Oh, land development. Okay, I'm sorry. And a doctoral candidate in urban and regional science at Texas A&M University.
Yes.
So you're definitely accomplished there, and you have 18 years of interdisciplinary academic training, scholarly work and research for dozens of fields of study. Here's the best part. At Yale, she supports geospatial endeavors by connecting experts and advising how to integrate GIS into any field. That must be pretty exciting there at Yale. And then promoting data-driven decision-making and enabling others' geospatial power of influence cutting-edge research and projects. And you're also currently serving as a mentor and international chair for the first workshop in spatial intelligence for the academic group of GIS LATAM.
Yes.
And you're also a board member of the director of Junta for Progressive Action. Hey, you are quite a busy woman.
Thank you.
And you recently served as a member of the advisory committee on Yale Library Staff Diversity and Inclusion. And last but not least, you were also featured in the Esri Press book, Women in GIS Mapping Their Stories. And so, you know, that's kind of how you kind of came to our light, was, you know, seeing you in that book and what was going on there at the Esri UC. And there was just a lot of buzz and a lot of great things happening around that whole subject matter. And so thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, Toby, before you get started,
Yes.
we got news about that book, right? So the Women in GIS, what are we going to do with a few
All
of those?
right. Well, we actually received a few free copies from Esri. And so those of you that are online, we'll do a random draw.
I have a copy here. I was not prepared, but
There we go.
because you don't have, yeah.
So we will do a random draw of those that are online here, and we'll email you and let you know if you'll receive a copy, and then you can give us your address, and then we'll send you a copy of the book. So I think we have, what, 10 of them? Is that what they said we have?
Yep.
Awesome. So 10, that's like, that's a pretty good amount to deal with. So, you know, I just want to set some context here with what we're discussing here. Is, you know, we always talk about GIS leadership and management in an enterprise program context, and you know, we talk about taking people on a journey from getting from point A to point B, you know, through this whole thing. And this topic of overcoming inequity at the GIS workplace is really just like another component of that journey, you know. And these are things that we're going to face along the way. So, you know, we want to just bring this as awareness, you know, to everybody that, you know, these things exist. I mean, you can't take a blind eye to it, but, you know, in order to reduce that gap, we have to have awareness. We have to know that things are going on. But I do want to say that we are not HR professionals by any means, you know, and we don't represent any particular group. And this is definitely not a show to solicit advice, because, you know, we're just not qualified to provide those types of things. But it is where we are sharing our personal experience. And so I want you to be sensitive to that fact, because we have kind of like three things against us. You know, we're vulnerable in this situation because A, it's a public forum. 2, we got cameras rolling. And then 3, you know, we're providing our own personal experience. So we just want to make sure that, you know, everyone is sensitive to that, and you know, that we're not placing any judgment on anyone or anything in what we're saying here. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew that you know, we're trying to be free and open about this conversation. And again, we're not professionals in any way, but, you know, we have Miriam, who has, you know, been involved in a lot of discussions and committees and things like that. And so, you know, she has a lot of great stories and great commentary. And we had our pre-webinar discussion, you know, that could have been a webinar in itself. It was just like unbelievable with how much was going on. So anyways, you know, enough of my rambling. Welcome, Miriam.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you know, can you briefly go over your career and how you got where you are today? Just, you know, kind of give context to the community.
Yeah, if you allow me, first, I really want to say thank you to the three of you, because I am very excited about this hour, and I really hope this is just the beginning of many other conversations. I want to share with the audience. I want to thank everyone who's connected right now, like real time, but also those who are watching during the archive session. The topic at the beginning was different. It was something about celebrating women in GIS, and I think they agreed that they will do it, but having a conversation, we all agreed that perhaps the topic that we needed today was exactly what the title says, overcoming inequities in the GIS workplace. As Toby mentioned, it is difficult to open up. I actually have really hard time opening up, and I've been doing that more lately. Not because I like it, actually it's very difficult. Some of you know that I presented at the women's panel at Esri UC conference. During the dry run on Zoom, I actually couldn't contain, and I started crying because I was sharing with women in the panel during the test, something that I was going through. And it's really, really hard. So yes, I just want to say, I do not like to share, but I'm sharing hoping that maybe today or during the recordings and YouTube, a manager will listen a few things that I'm going to share, because it's impossible to share everything in the time that we have. but also someone who's going through what I've gone. I call it shortcuts. When I meet someone that just arrived to my, like I meet that is new in the area, I always say, you gotta learn shortcuts, because I have learned that that is one of the gifts that you can give to your colleagues. And another thing that I wanna mention, and I was clear to share that with our hosts, is that this is not only for women. I feel that my experience happens to many people who are in need or that come with a background that is not completely nurtured to be absolutely successful. So please keep that in mind. I might not be using the right terms because I'm trying to share a lot of information, but just keep in mind that I might be referring to you, even if you and I are not the same. So, so talking about my journey, how I got to Yale. Well, it's been really long, and I won't take a lot of time, but I just want to share that I grew up in a town that didn't have a lot of resources. I thought it was a big city because the name is city, Ciudad Valles. So I thought it was a city. It is a city, a big city in my state, but the resources for at the time were not there. The high school was just opening for attending the nuns high school, but I really wanted to go to a great school, and I had this dream to go to Monterrey. But I was kind of following just a friend who was doing that because she had family in Monterrey, a friend from secondary school. I was lucky that my brother, without asking me, he didn't enroll me in that school, and he actually enrolled me in a wonderful high school, Monterrey Tech. There is where I learned struggling. I was not ready for that school. I was coming from a small town, and I hear that a lot when students come from small towns to the big universities. So very rigorous high school, and I got prepared for college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have at that time any direction or a mentor that was guiding me what to do, or perhaps I was too shy to ask, and mentors are too busy to seek out for the shy ones. So keep that in mind. The reason why I got into architecture is because I heard while riding a bus going from my city to Monterrey, I heard someone saying, oh, architecture is super cool because you do all these things. And it's how I decided architecture, literally. So about to get to architecture, my dad decided that he didn't want me to be alone because my siblings were living in Monterrey, and he decided I couldn't continue school in Monterrey. He was gonna bring me back home and work in the bank. And an act of kindness there, a friend from high school that was my friend just for 2 years, changed completely my life. And I'm telling this because my theme today in the part is about compassion. Rocio, my friend, talked to her family, and I don't know how they convinced them, and they invited me to live with them the entire college. I was at their house. That's why I got my degree. My plan was to go to study master's in Italy, but it didn't happen because my dad got really ill. He needed a kidney transplant, and I had to go back to my hometown. I didn't have really a place where to work, so I started being creative, and I decided to open my own business. I had no idea what I was doing, but little by little, and with the help of my mentors, who at that time were the construction workers, I learned, and I think I succeeded really well. But I always had that dream about following a master's degree. And at that time, I guess I just got this idea, why not to make it even more complex? I was a single mom by then, and I decided to come to the United States, to Texas A&M. My English was not good. I arrived here. I knew little about the struggles international students go through. I really struggled to get through even getting admitted for auditing classes and then admission. So anyway, while I was studying, I got the opportunity to join the libraries to start the GIS services, and that was a lot of fun. It was the first position that was full-time position, and we were doing so much. The university had so many students, academic departments, professors teaching GIS, remote sensing, that it was very easy for me to do my work. And I really relied on colleagues and students. So we got to the point to receive the Esri SAG Award. I was very proud of that. But I'm just telling you like the surface. But behind the scenes, there were some challenges that I'm gonna share in a minute. So,
Are you ready for your second question, or do you have more to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think between all the work that I did at Texas A&M and the SAG Award, perhaps because I was not out in the arena a lot, but I didn't know anyone at Yale. And I got hired without knowing anyone, and I can say it's just because I was working really hard. I think it got me here. That was the key.
That's great.
Awesome.
That is quite the journey. I can appreciate that is not a normal journey for perhaps many of our listeners. Certainly, I think us on a panel here. Yeah. So let me throw another question at you. Obviously, you've had success, and I'm sure that you've had these challenges that you're referring to kind of along the way as a woman and as an immigrant. Can you take us through some of those challenges and the lessons that you learned along the way, your experience that you may share for others that may be facing similar challenges? Yeah.
So challenges were more than I could imagine, and at that time that I could go through. But I became very skillful in finding mentors. I definitely had a lot of people who offered help, but I also reached out and volunteered some people to be my mentors. I didn't not only ask a lot of questions, but I asked a lot of help too. And many times my mentors really left me completely. I was like out of options, and they really, really did something to change and make it happen so I could continue here at Texas A&M at that time. So in the GIS world, I really feel that I am blessed, because when I started working as a professional, getting into the library, higher education, providing support, I started meeting people from the industry, from the local agencies, colleagues in different academic departments, and I noticed that everybody was very kind. Yes, sometimes they don't want to share a data layer here or there, but in general, you would agree with me that we are very kind group of people. We care about the humanity. We are trying to save communities, and I think that transpires in the interactions. But you don't interact only with GIS colleagues. During my time at Texas A&M, I had some things, mostly because, just think about it. I was an international student. I was a single mom. I was living with a student salary, no child support, my family away, and just getting to know people without anybody to vouch you, right? To say, yeah, she's a good person. She grew up in my community. No, I didn't have that. So it was hard. And then I started working really, really hard. I remember I would stay long hours, long hours, because we had to build these services, right? But I started noticing that I started feeling I was not appreciated in terms of how much time I was putting. And I would never hear something like, hey, let's make a plan. What's happening with you? Work balance. I know that happens across many agencies, and I have a couple of things to share about that. But one thing is that when you are in a work visa, you are in a disadvantage. And I have heard the same thing for people that says, I own the house, my family's here, and they know that I'm not leaving. So that is when I started realizing is like, there's something that is not working right. And then honestly, you face, I had one specific situation that my visa, I had to renew my visa, and actually the director of HR was not very kind to me. And even at just having a cup of coffee, she would come and I would say literally harass me and reminded me that I have to leave and find another job because she's not renewing my visa without even having a discussion with her boss. That transpired into a lot of problems for me. Being a single mom is like when you open a startup company and you don't know if you will have money to cover payroll this weekend, right? And it's very stressful. If you have a new business, you might know what I'm talking about, or if you have had a business. But in this case, you have a child, you don't have the money, and then you know that because you're Latina, you might be getting paid 47% less than your colleagues. So with 47%, I could have done miracles. Sometimes I remember I went to sell my books to the 50 off to have enough money for that week. So because of the limitations, I couldn't get 2-3 jobs because I was limited by immigration laws. So those things, I have another incident, like just renewing my visa would be $300. And it wasn't approved by a higher rank. But then the same week, they bought a dog, like Reveille is the mascot at A&M. They bought a dog for, I think I asked in a meeting and they said $2,300. It is very hurtful. It is very hurtful. It doesn't matter if it's different pots of money. The compassion is very important when you're dealing with humans. And your employees are humans. So those stay as scars. At the beginning, it's good to have challenges because you start learning if you are good, skillful, if you are resourceful. But at the beginning, it's fun. But when it happens 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, it becomes exhausting. I am sorry, it sounds maybe a heavy conversation, but it is what it is. It's the reality, and I thought I wanna share because it is painful, but there's many ways that we can avoid doing that to our reports, to our colleagues.
Yeah, I mean it is like you said, it's a reality, you know, and again, bringing up the awareness of this is what we're trying to accomplish. And, you know, by telling your story, this is definitely, you're one of probably thousands, you know, of going through these type of struggles, you know, and
and really I like to, if you allow me, Toby, I like to remind people is like, we are fighting for dollars for an organization. Mm-hmm. And we are impacting a full family. Mm-hmm. The story I told you, I don't know, I think she's retired now and she must be gardening, enjoying the sun. Mm-hmm. I'm still catching up. Yeah. After a decade, I'm still catching up. Mm-hmm. And my son too.
Yeah. And you know, you're doing the same work. You're doing the same work as everybody else. So, you know, why should there be any difference there, whether you have a green card or visa, you know, male, female, you know, you should get paid for what you're worth, you know. So I want to put a poll up here. Is we have a few questions. I want to kind of see where the audience is at. And have you perceived any inequalities, any inequities in your workplace? I'm sure like it's probably going to be high. So we'll go for like 10 more, 20 seconds.
All right, hey, Toby, while we're waiting on the polls to return here,
Yeah.
I've got a question from Ariel Simmons-Steffen. And she asked, as a woman developer, her experience has been a little more hostile, or as hostile. And to the point where now, when they hire developers, they're down to, she's been there 2 or 3 years, and there are not any women developers even applying at their workplace. And this might lead to the next question, but what can be done in these environments? Miriam, do you have any comments on this? Is this something that you can address?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second part. I heard about the developers, but
Okay, so she's saying that the developers, now when they have open positions, women aren't even applying for these GIS developer jobs. And she wants to know, what can be done in these environments? How do we change that?
well, I would say I've seen that people are asking women, professionals of color to help to find candidates. I don't think that is the way to go. I think institutions, organizations should have a serious commitment to find diversity and to show that they have an environment that are welcome women and other groups. If we know that getting there, it will be so hard on a daily basis, why we would even try to apply? I think people not applying is a good thermometer to take a look and say, we have a problem here. That is what I can say.
Yeah, she goes on. I mean, the culture is completely hostile toward women and minorities. And it may be just this, she's at a mid-sized software development company. But, maybe the question to you is this isolated, or do you see, maybe from your own experience, that this is a little more common than we'd like to think?
I'm not in so we don't hire lots of GIS professionals in my department. What I know is there's several things that people are afraid to apply for. So a few things would be how much work you would be doing. We had Dr. Diana Sinton coming to present here at Yale. She's an extraordinary scholar. And she dissected a position of GIS librarian. And oh God, that person who was going to apply, it would save the entire world, all the countries, because the position had everything. And I don't think that is isolated for GIS librarians. I think that's happening a lot across the discipline. And I'm sorry to say, but I have a lot of colleagues in the government sector that are with the title of GIS analyst or GIS specialist, and they do everything, all of the above. And having that across the nation doesn't mean that it's right. We gotta do something about it.
Well, that leads us into the next question here. So what would be the ideal workplace? Now that you've had this experience, we've had a few questions, and kind of I hear a lot. The Esri conference covered it. I was at an Agile conference a couple of weeks ago about diversity, equality, inclusion. What would be the ideal workplace that you would think, Miriam?
Yeah, I have some notes for that. It is hard for me to give the whole list because I'm not an expert, but based on what I've seen and what I have heard from my peers, I think the first thing for managers and directors and decision makers is open your mind. Please listen, learn, and don't get upset when you hear the truth. And when you hear, we are struggling and we need you to listen and believe that we need a change. Bias, we need to combat bias. There's many kind of bias. I personally experienced several, but there's the performance bias. For instance, I submitted a ticket for tech support once, and I said, I need training and I want to learn. Those were the two keywords that I used. And the tech person who referred the ticket reported, she doesn't understand. Where that came from? Bias. I've been asked, why did you come to this meeting? It is too technical, you won't understand. That is not only hurtful. The problem is not that I feel bad that day. I can go home and eat chocolate or good tacos and I will forget. The problem is that translates into my opportunities for promotion, salary raise, being invited for special projects, and even selected to represent my organization. If they don't believe that I can, then how? Other bias would be likability. People like to get together with those that are similar to them. So for instance, women, if you are assertive in the table, you know how we are called, whereas men are seen as effective leaders. So also that gets problematic to get the job done because there's a lot of pushback. Maternal bias. I am not in that stage, but I know a lot of my colleagues have little children and they need to leave on time, and that is not seen well sometimes. And I'm not talking about my current organization. I'm talking about my peers that I know. Affinity bias. So for instance, I don't drink. I drink very rarely or mostly soft drinks. I've seen that not drinking, it brings a little barrier with those happy hours and discussing business. And then, you know, you can be sitting at that table, but next time they don't invite you or something. It sounds like not important, but it is. And of course, the intersectionality. Having all these bias together, it makes things even worse. Can I keep going?
Sure, if you have some more, that's fine.
I'm gonna go into diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So having a discussion with my colleague Jen Nolte, she gave me a perspective that is even more in depth than what I see myself as a diversity. Diversity, she was pointing out to me how if you don't have a diverse organization, how even your products can bring risk to the organization because you are not taking into account all the aspects. I don't know if you've seen some videos, perhaps those videos are just not reflecting reality, but I've seen videos where there's two males, one with light skin trying to use the automated faucet in a bathroom, and the faucet runs water. And then a man with a darker skin, and the faucet won't do that. I don't know if that is true because I haven't tested with two friends, but I believe it is true because many times in the developing world, they forget about many other groups. And in GIS, our maps are so important. Some maps are to save lives. And if you don't take into account everything, then what happens?
Yeah.
So that leads me to something that is very important and it has become essential for me. That is compassion. To draw your attention, I will tell you that LinkedIn has a campaign about compassion. So compassion, according to Jeff Weiner, is empathy, but empathy is to feel what another person feels. But compassion is a more objective form of empathy where you see the world through their lens, you understand how they feel, and you are in a position to do something. That is the important part. Remember I told you that I was working a lot and staying late at night? I had an interim director who came. She observed just 1 week I didn't say a word. And she called me to her office and asked me permission. Listen what she said. Miriam, I'd like to ask permission to divide your position into 2 positions. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even ask her.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
Yeah.
that for those people, giving compassion is the reason why I have survived everything else.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really important point. Empathy, compassion, that's some of the things that I really tout about as far as with leadership. When you have like your one-on-ones with your staff, is having that empathy, you know, getting to know your staff, getting to know them on a personal level. You know, maybe they have an aging parent, maybe their child is going to college, or, you know, something that's happening in their life, and you need to be able to have compassion and empathy for what they're going through, so that you have an understanding, you know, and you're not having this high expectation because of things that they're going through. So, but that also has to happen across the board too. So you can't just have compassion for one staff because you like them and not for the other. You know, it has to be across the board. And as a leader, you know, you have to be firm with that and be consistent, because then people will start to understand you and understand your leadership values, and also be able to, you know, go in line and follow direction with the things that you need done. And they'll do that because you have compassion for them. You have empathy for them. So I think that's really, really important.
I'm reading what Miriam is explaining, and absolutely agree with you, Mary. I also believe that onboarding is extremely important, because the newcomers not only will have fresh eyes to see what's happening, but also they can experience a lot of bullying or harassment. And if nobody's paying attention to them, they won't know what to do because they are too new to reach out for help. So that's why institutional support is very important. Mm-hmm. And I will explain what I mean by that. So if the system is not there for you, then you need to advocate for yourself. And sometimes you don't have all the resources, and it becomes a burden for you. So it is important for managers and decision makers to think, is there an ombudsperson to deal with problems, when actually the managers or the decision makers are the problems where the employees would go? Mm-hmm. Are there programs and initiatives for diversity and inclusion, accessibility, personal development until retirement? Because you are aging doesn't mean that you don't have the right to be invested as others. Is your office, your organization dealing with sexual harassment in an effective manner? Do they have enough people? If someone goes and report, would they take the case, or they are too busy and they would discourage you because then another case would come to the table? Once they make a decision and a recommendation, is the organization following up and fulfilling those recommendations? Are the bullies addressed on a timely manner, or are they being promoted? Anyone knows anyone like that? Yes, I do.
Maybe not promoted, but
if you don't act fast,
department,
and sometimes promoted. If the bullies are not resolved on time, they become harassers and they become pros. And then the victims become really start diminishing, and the power they have becomes nothing. So do you have practices where you can identify not only harassment, but needs? Are you spending enough time to go to your lower level employees and understand what's happening? If you are an employee and X classification, do you know how much the other classification pays for insurance, for parking, how they get to work? Those are important. So when you go to the big meetings, you speak up for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Toby, do we have any other polls?
Yeah, we do. You know, that first poll, so, you know, we had about 88% that had seen some type of inequity. And so for the second poll, let's go here.
on that topic though, I think, we'd probably all like to appreciate that GIS can be, a very nurturing oriented discipline, but we are not immune to the behaviors and patterns that we've all heard about in the news. And I think it's just important to raise that understanding and awareness that we're not different in that regard.
Yeah. So the next bullet is, how do you respond personally to personally applied inequities? So you can either ignore it, tell family, friends, tell coworkers, notify management, speak to HR, other.
So while folks are looking at answering that question, there's a question from Claire that writes, how managers might help staff get to know each other and to develop a culture of compassion when we spend so much time at the computer. So I'm interested in Miriam's answer to that, and I'll just kind of give my 2 cents. I think that this just really represents how a GIS manager has the opportunity to create that culture themselves. And to take care of and be compassionate for your team is simply to acknowledge your team, hear your team, have situations and opportunities to talk not only about maybe work or what your team is striving for, but also what's important to the team. You need to be compassionate, but what I heard was that's only the first step. You really have to have awareness, and then you have to make the commitment to take some form of action. So it's more than just being aware. You as a manager have some responsibilities to ensure that whether it be diversity or whether it be fairness, that the ultimate responsibility, I think, starts at a GIS manager for the benefit and the compassion of the team.
Yeah.
And I could add to this, Wade, because there may be environments where maybe you, the manager, wants to be more compassionate and have a better culture, but the overall enterprise isn't, right? I mean, maybe it does have a culture of inequity. And what we could do is create like a culture bubble, right? So at least within your space, within your own control, you can create this environment that you really that you can really kind of allow diversity inclusion occur. Sorry, it's getting a little loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that the bubble, I'm not sure how it would work without having the institutional commitment. And that is what I see as a problem. The institution needs to invest. They need to understand actually compassion. Again, the campaign in LinkedIn, what they say is that it affects if there's no good relationship, it affects for high quality decisions to be fast. So it's money for the organization. If you don't build trust, people won't go to you and they will be avoiding you, and it takes forever. Projects that could take like maybe a week or two can draw like for months. So I believe investment by the organization is essential.
So here's our poll results here. So looking at almost 60% tell family and friends, and 60% also notify management. That's very important. I'm interested in what the other would be. I don't know. Maybe people could put that in chat, but I'd be interested in what the other would happen to be. Is that these results here, Miriam? Is that surprising to you, or you think that that's kind of like in line with what you've kind of seen?
I can see why telling family and friends seems easier than reporting to HR. Sometimes organizations are small and the HR person is friends with the person who's committing the infraction. Yeah. Or sometimes the HR director is harassing you. So notify management. If you have a good manager that works and they can advocate for you, the problem is when the manager is the problem. Eva Reed was saying about the follow-up and the outcome, and I do agree. I've seen that when people speak up and it goes nowhere. And that's a problem. And that's why we need to continue speaking up and letting people know that it's not right. That there's got to be a way to become an organization when they treat, at least in my case, I can say, women or minority as a person that values the same as the decision makers who are not paying attention.
Mm-hmm. You know, real quick, a story here. I do coaching on the side, and I coached one person who, and it was a female, and she got a bad review, but she knows full-heartedly and has documentation that she did great. And, you know, most people would probably just kind of pass that off, try better next time, you know. But I think it says something for her that she actually went against management and met with them and documented and said, hey, this is what was expected of me. I have met and exceeded. I don't believe I should be downgraded in these particular areas. And I think it speaks volumes for the fact that she is a go-getter, progressive. She's not going to just, you know, be pushed to the side. And I think that speaks volume. And so that, you know, as maybe the culture changes within the organization, you know, they can recognize those things and realize, hey, that is the type of person we want, you know, to be in a higher level within the company. So, you know, it may feel uncomfortable and painstaking at first, and bringing it to management and going through all of that process. But, you know, in the end, it makes you a better person and allows you to kind of, you know, live with yourself. Like, hey, I'm speaking up for myself. So I think that's really important.
Hey, Tim, you had, I'm not sure if the audio will support this. We'll let you know if the background noise is just too high.
I think it's better now.
You had, in our kind of a tech check session, you had given an example of a bit of a hiring belief. Mm-hmm. Could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I thought I'd solve this problem, right? I mean, the way we hire people is I would, you know, maybe interview them on the phone, meet them in person, and go, you know what, the team is going to hire you. So the team gets to choose who this person's going to be because they're going to work with them mostly, and I'll just do the paperwork. And I thought, problem solved, right? Because, you know, it's not my decision to do it. And I got called out. I was at a conference and we had a discussion about this, and the topic came up about hiring practices, and I swelled up like, oh, I've got this. I know exactly how this is handled. And as I was telling that story, one of the women in the discussion goes, well, how many women are on your team? I was like, well, one. She goes, all right, so mostly men are deciding, now who are you hiring? Are you hiring men or are you hiring women? And at that point, I realized, I'm like, oh dear, this is happening, that we tend to want to hire like people, like ourselves, kind of what Miriam was talking about. And I really, you know, it affected me. I didn't know what to do at that point. And now I'm conscious of it. I mean, we had one other instance where we had database administrators, and we only had 3 candidates, and one was a woman, and everybody voted for the male candidate, and except for the woman on the team. And I asked her, I go, why did you vote for her? And her response was simply, she's a woman, and we need more women on the team. And I ignored that. I simply just thought, that's silly, you know. But now I get it, or at least I feel like I get it. I mean, I'm trying to create more of a diverse team. And that's what I was getting to about culture bubbles. If institutionally I can't affect it, at least I might have some effect within my own organization or my own group. But yeah, is that the story you were looking for?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
I think when you get to, for me, I just want to share that the way that I started resolving issues was by my own education. The mentors, I mentioned already my mentors, but I became even more, not selective, but I looked specifically for mentors older than me, but younger than me too. They bring a lot of expertise for me to resolve issues, and male and females. And I present the cases maybe to more than one, and then I decide how I would approach the problem. You can have thought partners to help you go through, or having career coaches. Reach out to mental health services to talk about the employment issues. Also, there's many groups, and I have joined several of them, and it's been helping me a lot. Here at Yale, I joined the Library Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I was in the Women in Tech, attending several of their workshops. I joined Women in GIS, a tremendous group that is growing for several years now. I haven't attended, but I know the University Consortium for GIS, for those who are in academics, they have a workshop, for a week workshop, that is called As GIS, which is training and retaining leaders in STEM for geospatial sciences. There's many groups of women in STEM and women in science groups that you can join to discuss these matters. And what I see is that in these groups, male also attend the meetings because they want to learn. There won't be many, but you can start inviting them. Mm-hmm. They are maybe not too open to attend, but if you invite them, and those education moments, I will tell you few of the trainings that I know that I found useful. Unconscious bias. Here at Yale, I have attended, and I really have liked the way that was presented the information, because you leave the room feeling like, oh boy, I need to work a lot on it. Navigating conflict. If your organization, if your management tends to avoid, then you know there's a big problem and you need to speak up about it. Many organizations now have sexual harassment in the workplace as a mandatory, but if it's just an online training, it might not be effective. So reach out to those who are decision makers that are deciding how to deliver that information. For instance, the Managing Compassionately, LinkedIn is in LinkedIn Learning, and I think you can even do a trial for free. So those are some of the ideas, and but the last 5 years, I've been heavily trying to learn. I think there's a lot of sharing in the chat. Toby, I don't know if you can add.
One thing I want to make sure, because you mentioned a lot of these different organizations and courses and things like that. I want to make sure, because obviously we don't know everything. We don't know all what's out there. I mean, every city or county or state or institution has their own organization to kind of help support them in some way. And so I want to make sure, like in chat, that you guys post any organizations that to help support women in GIS, or just women in general, and we can now post that in Slack as a resource for people to view, because there's no way that we would know like everything to be able to post about that. But we definitely want to share whatever information that we can acquire from everybody. So if you can, please post in chat about that.
Toby, do you have another poll?
I think we do. Let's find out what we got here.
There's just one that I'm expecting to see that we've had people comment on in the chat, the one about leaving work.
Okay, let's do that one here. So let's launch that. So do you expect to leave your current GIS job because of inequities? Yes, I will leave once I find another job. Maybe I'm considering to leave, or no. Let that post there for a little bit. Miriam, I really appreciate the commentary and your journey. I mean, it's something that having that exposure just allows us to open our eyes a little bit more as leaders and managers to understand and be empathetic to what other people are having to go through. And you know, we've all had our own situations. You know, I've been in positions before where, kind of like what you were saying, you walk into a meeting and you're like, what are you doing here? You know, this is above you. You know, you shouldn't be here. So, you know, even as males, we go through those types of scenarios too. And
well, I want to recognize the vulnerability that you were willing to share with us, Miriam, and the bravery that it takes to be vulnerable on a forum. You know, as friendly as we like to think we are, it takes a lot of bravery to do that. And I want to express my sincere appreciation for you sharing very uncomfortable situations. It helps raise my awareness of the real issues and inequities that we have to accept exist within the GIS profession. There's no way around that. And the only way to address that is to be proactive. And if we're talking to existing GIS managers out there, I think that we bear the responsibility to speak up for the people that work for us in all of their challenges and where they want to go, knowing them enough to know where they want to go, and then helping them get there. So thank you, Miriam.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I am fascinated trying to read, and I know I've been very distracted because all the comments are just amazing. There's a lot of wisdom in the chat. So
and we're gonna capture all that. There's been an incredible conversation going on there. So we're gonna capture all the chat. We'll put it like Toby said, so we can go back and review. I know there's a couple of questions that it doesn't look like we had a chance to get to, so we'll try to get those answered too, or at least maybe Miriam could give some advice. But I really appreciate you letting us kind of be part of your story now.
Yeah,
Well,
you know, so Toby, go ahead and let them know where they can find the comments and how to join Slack.
okay, well, when you received your email for the webinar, there was a Slack link in there that you can click on to join Slack. But also, you will also get another email after the conclusion of this webinar. When I post this to YouTube, you'll also get a notification as well. And then the Slack link will be included. So, so there'll be multiple ways you can get to our Slack group. And
so
yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to say, I don't know if before we close this, if it can be any commitment to invite other women. There's so much wisdom here, and I think we run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I left a lot of items out that I wanted to share because it's not enough. We really need to share so others who are a little oblivious or very oblivious can start getting the ideas and implementing changes.
Yeah, you know, again, this is like one of, you know, many that can happen. You know,
Tien says, let's
but, you know, like I said, you know, this is, you know, noticing these inequities is part of a GIS leadership journey. You know, we have to deal with these. We have to be able to recognize them. We have to be able to reduce that gap. And so this is just kind of help bring that awareness to everybody, you know. So again, I really appreciate it, Miriam. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you? What do you have a Twitter handle, email?
I wanted to say, please, if I can help in any way, I can tell you more things. I can share more stories. I have tried to resolve some things others were very difficult. But if you want to reach out, I'm on LinkedIn, very active. You definitely can send an email to my work. Is miriam.olivares@yale.edu. Or let me know. Also, yeah, I guess LinkedIn and email would be the best way. But also, if for any reason you don't find me, please let Toby know about you wanting to talk to me, and I'll be more than happy to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you for everyone for attending. You know, we went over a little bit, but I think it was very important that we share these points and bring this awareness and stories. And
so, Heather is attending, and she was my student consultant, and we together were having struggles, right, Heather? Good for you. You're doing great.
There's a support. See, you need that support system, you know, and just having people around to support you, you know, can help elevate. And thank you everyone for attending. I will get this replay out hopefully by Monday. I know we have a holiday here Monday, so I will definitely try to get it out there with all the show notes and everything, and you will be notified via email when that gets posted as well. So
along with our selected folks for the book giveaway.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
so,
we'll have to just make, you know, we've got 10. There's been lots of great comments. I'm sure we'll distribute those to people who made great comments. I'm sorry that we can't give everyone a book, but thank you very much. This has been, you know, actually hard for me to keep up. I'm a slow reader, so I don't know that I got all of them, but I would say so far from the webinars that we've had, this has been some of the most involved contributions from the attendees. I really appreciate it. I think our program gets better because of the input from all of you that are out there.
yeah, and Miriam is also on our Slack channel too. So if there's, you know, questions there, you know, you guys can also ask that. So appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for staying. We had around 40 people still around, so thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
sure
We'll watch later.
Yeah, I'm sure
for
the
the
replay
time
will get a lot.
Putting
So.
the time, the webinar time to this topic. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Miriam.
Thank you,
Bye,
everybody.
Fantastic.
Have a great day. Have a safe holiday, and we will see
Nice.
you next month on the GIS Peer Success webinar. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.